passion that we have towards certain stories, specifically the ones that we grew up on, are something we hold near and dear to our hearts. And when a film adaptation of that story comes out and it doesn't really match up to what we're used to, we kind of pick at it with 100% accuracy. But why do we do that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode: expectations versus adaptations. So books and movies, they go hand in hand like Bert and Ernie, like peanut butter and jelly, like Pauly Shore. And, well, I can't think of anything else with Pauly Shore. It hasn't always been that way though, especially when it comes to the genre and that of the superhero films. I remember watching films like Blade, Spider-Man, the first X-Men, during that time period. All I remember was sitting there in the theater going, damn, this is amazing. But I feel like when social media really started to take shape, that, the need for these films to have 100% faithful adaptations started to take shape. And since social media, if I said the word creative liberty, what does that make you feel? Creative liberty has, a negative feel towards it because we've been burned in the past by that word. We probably think of directors looking at the source material going, oh, Galactus, he's a big world-eating machine. Awesome. Let's make him a cloud instead. But let's look at some examples where creative liberty actually has helped the film and gained the film more followers than ever before. Now, the first example we're going to look at is Christopher Nolan's unbelievable film, The Dark Knight. And yes, specifically the Joker. Now, Joker's origin story has been told in both live action adaptations and also the animated films and TV shows. But what Christopher Nolan did, it kind of moved what we thought about the Joker's origin story and kind of gave a new life into it. They created something a little different. Gone are the days of the chemical bath origin story, a la 1989 Tim Burton, where Jack Nicholson fell into that vat of acid and it created the Joker. In turn, Nolan changed it to have a mystery about the character, right? An anarchist character who, in the movie, several times gave these wild stories as to his father, as to his wife, and you got to this point where when he told the last story, you're like, wait, which one of those stories is true? If any of those are true, who is this guy? It gave the character more of a mysterious feel, and in turn, it gave the character more popularity. I mean, that and the performance of Heath Ledger. But that sudden change, that creative liberty they took, really helped that character be more fleshed out than ever before. And the Russo brothers also did this within Thanos in the Infinity Wars. You see, in the comics, Thanos courted death. That's right, it was a physical representation of death. Now, Thanos did everything he could to prove his love for death. Well, this notion really, it could have worked in a live adaptation, but what they did instead, what they rewrote, made the character more relatable, and you understood why he wanted to destroy half the world's population. And as you got older, you kind of were like, maybe he was right. But what about accuracy? What if you're completely dedicated and focused on the source material, that you're so accurate in the construction of the script, of the set, that it might help or hurt the film? A good example of this are two films, Sin City and Watchmen. Both created absolute perfect detail, solid adaptation of the graphic novels, down to the point where you see in the background on certain shots, specifically in Watchmen, that picture frames and books are exactly what you see from the drawn, comic panels to what Zack Snyder put on film. Now, these details, specifically with Watchmen, hurt the reputation of the film when it came out. Namely because a lot of people thought the film lacked originality because they pulled literally panel for panel and made the film based off of that. Essentially, it was like the comic book was a storyboard and they just created it, which isn't that bad of an idea. But let's look at the other side of it, the positive side, and that of The Last of Us. When the show came out, we were drooling because those of us that played the game really were like, oh my gosh, I remember playing this. I felt this feeling. And I think that's the difference, is because video game adaptations into movies are a little different than when you're reading something. Because when you are playing a game, you're physically this character. You're feeling what this character is feeling. And a lot of these stories also go back to when we first saw this, specifically when we saw certain movies as a kid. Sometimes it's not the filmmaker's fault. Sometimes it boils down to the studio. Now, a good example of that is the X-Men. So we all know and love the X-Men. It was my gateway into comic books, and we know that orange spandex, that's their calling card. You know, those costumes are iconic to them. So when the film came out, that's what we were hoping to see, but instead we got black leather. Why is that? We have to remember at the time, what was really popular was that dark biker leather jacket kind of feel. Not just in, you know, everyday life, but also in films. Like, for example, Neo. Neo was what? Black trench coat. The whole thing was like black leather. So at the time, the studio was like, listen, this is what's being consumed right now outside in the real world, and you know, this is what people gravitate towards. So I don't think this is going to work. Let's go towards black spandex. That's what we're doing. But now you fast forward to 2025, and thank God Ryan Reynolds, he showed us that yellow spandex works. So I'm gonna give you the, you know, the Wayne's World, I'm not worthy. Now this next example is about Sonic the Hedgehog. This is my favorite. Now when we first heard that Sonic was happening, we got our glimpse. They released the first picture of our beloved Sonic. And, well, it looked like a creature with human teeth, and like it just looked like someone took the Sonic that we knew, stomped on it for a while and went, this looks good. And what happened? Social media was a big thing. So people tweeted, were like, what is this? What's going on? I was one of them, not gonna lie. And the studio listened. And what they did is they went back and they re-rendered the entire film again with the new version of what Sonic looks like, right? And it is perfect, right? They nailed it. And what happened? Now we're in 3 films under the Sonic IP with a 4th one on the way. And these are just a few examples. We can do like multiple videos on this subject. But in conclusion, guys, I think this all boils down to capitalism and art. I mean, art is very subjective, and it's just something that's really near and dear to our hearts. Like I said at the very beginning, it's stories that we hold close. They're memories, we don't want to let them go, and we don't want them to be ruined. But if this is your first time visiting my channel, shameless plug, please hit the like, subscribe, to your friends or your family. Hope you enjoy my content, and until next time, I will see you guys at the theaters.